Hey everybody, it's Carpo again. This is part 2 of my little prisons rant, prisons and schools and modernity. I was talking about schools and how they're basically laid out like prisons. And one of the guys I was listening to even took it as far as to say that it's the same way in the mall. You go to the mall and you'd think anybody can go to the mall, just go shopping. The reality is that you have to walk certain ways. You have to walk in certain places. Hang out in one place too long, you'll be watched. You'll be followed. There's cameras everywhere. There's security everywhere. But on top of that, if you're wearing the wrong clothes, not only will you be followed or harassed, but you might not even be let in the mall. If you're wearing baggy pants, if you have a backpack on, if you have a hat, if you're wearing certain gang colors. And those of you who don't live in areas where this is an issue probably don't even realize what an issue it really is. I have been harassed for wearing a headband at work or at school. I was a hippie type kid. I was, when I was in school, I was wearing tie-dyes. I went from being the heavy metal fan to being the, hippie kind of guy in my freshman year all the way up through high school. I wore tie-dyes, Birkenstocks, all that kind of stuff. And one day I wore a headband to school, purple headband. And I was harassed and told to take it off by the teachers. It was a horrific moment, a horrific reality for me, even at being like 15. Like, wow, I'm being controlled in what I can wear. This is it. This is what they're talking about. And I understand there's a deeper notion there that, if you let one guy, then you have to let everyone. But, one time I actually thought I would be cool because I was like 13 or 14 and I was hanging out with these friends of mine in town and they were Crips. They said they were Crips. They thought they were cool. I thought they were cool because they were older. I went and hung out with them. We went downtown Portland. And just to be cool, I wore all blue with a blue headband and everything else. We got attacked by Bloods and they actually chased us down this Portland street and we ended up having to run up and get somebody to buzz us into this apartment building. Dudes were pounding on the window. One of my friends didn't make it in and they beat the shit out of him. It shows what just even colors can do. Of course, I was kind of asking for it at that point, but why? Well, because you're opposing this other system, this countering system, the Bloods, the Crips. And when you're in society, you're countering this system of this is what's acceptable by society. This is what you're supposed to do. This is who you're supposed to be. You need to go to school. You need to get a job. You need to have a career and support your family, or else you're a loser. And if you're a loser, then you need to get out of this country, or you need to get out of this, family, or whatever it may be. Everyone wants everyone else to be just like them. But unfortunately, the them that they want them to be like is the modernity forced upon the person. The modern day living wearing a person down to the point where they give in. Now, I'm going to jump to liberals and conservatives here because there are a couple different views on the way to run a society. The liberal view, the conservative view, let's say. Whenever I tell people that conservatives, whenever I call somebody whatever, I don't use derogatory terms like conservative and liberal, but whenever I say something against a conservative idea, somebody always calls me a libtard. And I know that these are words that were created by the powers that be, the good example is in my last video I brought up the fact that prisoners in ancient times were drawn and quartered by horses, tie the ropes to arms and legs and rip them off in different directions. And somebody was saying it's the liberals who stopped this. And so one may be led to ask, well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? In other words, if you were a murderer and your punishment was life in prison, let's say you were a murderer and your punishment was being drawn and quartered by a horse, sulfur poured in your wounds and lit on fire. That sounds like the most primal, horrific thing that a society can do, especially an upstanding, society that appears to have culture. But it leads me to wonder, why do they do it? It's not like all of these, intellectual people just let one thing slip their mind and just kind of push it to the back. These people consciously made the decision to do these things to people. Now, it's a horrible thing, but I bet it reduced crime significantly. And especially in ancient times where it wasn't so easy to find a criminal. Nowadays, you do something and you leave your hair behind, your DNA or your fingerprints. It's really easy to find people who have committed crimes compared to other times. But you know what the problem was in ancient times was that if a person committed a crime and they couldn't find the criminal, they'd just find somebody else they could use as a scapegoat. So let me use that to bring that into the modern day. That's exactly what we're doing in our government with every other country. And we have a terrorist attack on our country. What's the first thing we do? We go into Iraq. Okay? Now, the way that the people are lied to and fooled in our country is blatantly obvious to me. Because during the time when the Iraq War started, I remember seeing the first bombs fall, and I was in tears because I knew what was coming. I knew that it was going to get worse and worse, and people were dying, innocent people were suffering. And I met some of my friends who looked at the same bomb dropping and said, "Yeah, get them." You know, it's really easy to watch someone else get beat up, but if you're the guy getting the beating, it's a totally different story. Innocent people never deserve to die in war, but it's become just part of it. It's always been part of it. In fact, innocents are slaughtered purposely in war in order to create panic among the people. We've done it. America's done it many times. We bombed civilian areas in order to create a panic multiple times in wars, purposely. Soldiers were ordered to go into villages and kill the women and children in Vietnam. I know this for a fact, because my father told me the story. It happened to him. These things that our governments push as being okay in wartime, as if war rules are different. And they are to the warriors. But it's a control factor. It's a way to keep people. This is the same reason you don't take, that soldiers they want people in the military at 18 before they have a brain. No offense to 18-year-olds. I'm sure when I was 18, I was a very intelligent person and I knew a lot of things. But looking back today, I realized all that knowledge was useless without having the value system that I've developed, the integrity, to understand how to apply that knowledge, see? And that's a big point here, is that you can have all the knowledge you want, which I'm going to call information from now on, because I heard that point made, and I totally agree. Knowledge should be called information, because it's not necessarily knowledge as in knowing. You're knowing to the best of your ability, but you're being informed, you're forming your opinions. So having information allows one to live a life that's more conducive to life itself, to be able to make decisions, critical decisions, on the spot and do them correctly. Now, I've always been a procrastinator, and I've also always been a hard person who can't make up his mind. I have a hard time making decisions. My wife and I are both like that. When we go camping and we don't have a spot in mind, like, where should we go? Which way should we go? Is this cool? Is this cool? I don't know. So much of society is like that, non-decision making, and this is why we have people making decisions for us. And that's one point, and this is kind of a comparison here. We have governments making decisions for us, and we go along with it because it's easier than making up our own devices. I'm going to come back on part 3 on this because I have to think about it for a minute. I have a couple other things I'd like to share, but yeah, don't let the prison system be your own mind.